The Friendship War, Chapter 22, Supply and Demand. The windows along the north wall of the cafeteria face the grassy field behind the school, and from the table where I'm sitting with Hank, I've got a good view. It was raining this morning, but now it's sunny, so this is the first time on Wednesday that kids have been allowed outside to play. So how come Grace's Gorgeous Goodies isn't open for business? He asks. What? I said, you're not trading any buttons today? No sign. How come? Oh, right. Taking a break. Hank studies my face a moment and then turns around and stares out the windows because that's what I'm doing. And then he sees what I'm seeing. About 30 fifth and sixth graders are half walking, half running around the grass, then stopping to stoop down and then repeating the process over and over. What's going on out there? Yeah, looks weird, doesn't it? I really can't say more than that. Not without lying to Hank, which I don't want to. Because the fact is, I know exactly what's going on out there. Ben was right about economics. It's interesting, especially the part about supply and demand, which is all he really wanted to explain. He was like a college professor or something, completely serious, and yesterday after school, our kitchen was his lecture hall. The concept of supply and demand is simple. If the supply is something low, then that means there's not much of it around, so it's scarce, and that makes it feel more valuable to people. And the idea of something is valuable, that's called demand, which is basically the feeling that you want or need something. I had no trouble understanding that, and Ben could tell, so he kept talking. Let's use donuts as an example. Imagine there were just one donut shop in our town, and that one shop made only 2 donuts each morning. That would be a very low supply, right? And because people really love delicious donuts, there'd be a lot of people who wanted those 2 donuts, which means their demand would be very high. And instead of paying 99 cents, a person might be willing to pay much more, maybe even $5 or $10 for one donut. Also, a lot of people might try to be the first person at the door of the donut shop in the morning to buy a delicious donut, because there are only 2 in the whole town. I was still following along fine, but Ben wanted to be sure, so he flipped the situation around. But what if there were 15 donut shops in our town, and each shop made 1,000 delicious donuts every morning? There would be a very high supply of donuts, so people would feel like they had to shop, no need to rush to a shop to try and get one. No. Then people would be willing, and would people be willing to pay $5 or $10 for one donut? No, because now there's a very high donut supply, 15,000 every morning. And if the supply gets really high like that, what happens to the demand? To that, I've got to get a donut right now feeling. It dies. There might even be so many donuts around that people would get sick of them. So here's the most important idea. A very large supply of anything will kill the demand for that thing, no matter what it is. Which is my favorite sentence of his whole economics lesson. Then Ben stopped, and he looked me right in the eye, and he said the same sentence again, but much more slowly. A very large supply of anything will kill the demand for that thing, no matter what it is. As he'd been talking to me, Ben had also been doodling on a piece of notebook paper, drawing pictures of donuts and shop windows and trees and stuff, which was a little distracting, but I was ready for the rest of his lecture. So that's the end of your economics lesson, Ben said with a smile. What? But I thought you told me that you had an idea that he put his hand up. Nope, I'm done. And I didn't tell you to do anything. And then Ben slid his doodle paper across the table, grabbed his backpack, and walked out of the kitchen. I was left sitting there, trying to remember everything he'd said and looking at the dumb little pictures he had drawn. Ben's a terrible artist. A tree isn't that hard to draw, and neither is a shop window. But his pictures were so inaccurate. And I saw that he even messed up a drawing, something as simple as donuts, because 2 or 3 of his donuts were ridiculously small. And not only that, they had 2 holes instead of 1. Then I I saw what my very smart big brother had done. Those weren't small donuts with two holes. He had drawn some buttons. Just as Ben had promised, I got an idea about doing something. And it was sort of risky. It was definitely scary, but I did it anyway. Last night, just after dark, I sneaked out of the house to our garage. I had carried 4 boxes of buttons down there from my room before dinner. 3 boxes of small gray buttons, plus 1 box of mixed bright colors. I loaded buttons into my camping backpack, strapped it on, and rode my bike 7 blocks to school. Then I spread those buttons all around the playing field, throwing big handfuls again and again. I rode home, refilled my pack, and rode back again and again to the school to fling buttons around a second time, and then a third time, and a fourth time. The whole process took more than an hour, and I got back upstairs to my room just before my mom came to say goodnight. So, why did I scatter more than 150,000 buttons all over the playground? Because of economics. I did it to change the supply of buttons at Avery Elementary School. By the time I finish my lunch, a crowd of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders are outside, grabbing up buttons, including Hank. It looks like one of those Easter egg hunts on the lawn at the White House. Even from this far, I could see some bulging pockets stuffed with buttons. According to my brother, the economics professor, increasing the supply of buttons will kill the demand for buttons. That's the theory. And I have successfully launched my real life experiment. So now I have to wait and see what happens. At the end of the day on Wednesdays, it's a fact that now there are many, many more buttons at school, but they're mostly small and gray, except for about 20,000 of the larger brightly colored ones. The final bell rings, and 3 5th grade girls come rushing up to me in the hall outside Mrs. Lang's room to trade their best Ellie's Originals for some of my special buttons. By now, Ellie has figured out what I've been doing, and she gives me a dirty look on her way past. But these 3 trades are a surprise. I expected that having so many more buttons around was going to shut off all the demand, like Ben said. Then I see something. My fancy buttons are still scarce, so they're still in high demand. And it doesn't matter that they're surrounded by oceans of ordinary buttons. Also, demand for Ellie's Original ought to stay high because her stuff is all that I'm accepting in trade for my scarce fancy buttons. As I get on the bus, lots of colorful new buttons from the playground are changing hands. And again, such active button trading surprises me. Sorry. I'm starting to think that my big economics experiment has resulted in only one real change. I now have 4 fewer boxes of buttons at home in my bedroom. And of course, I'm still missing one best friend.